Man, oh man, does Syracuse make us sweat, but they found a way to get it done on Saturday against Louisville. So, where do they now stand in the ACC and a possible berth in the NCAA tournament? All that and more on Locked On Syracuse, and it starts right now.
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into Locked On Syracuse. I'm your host, Jackson Holzer, and thank you for making us your first listen of every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. This episode is brought to you by Nissan. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further? Ever wonder what adventure could be around the next corner? Take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Check them all out today at nissanusa.com. Everyone, breathe a sigh of relief. Syracuse takes down Louisville 82-76 on Saturday night. And man, oh man, these past 4 games, all wins. 4-game win streak for Syracuse. 20 wins now for Coach Autry. Unbelievable in his first season, 20 wins. But man, oh man, do they make us sweat. Every game has literally been a carbon copy. Every single one during this win streak. Still have the cup, right? So Syracuse right now is 2 steps down, and we'll talk about that later in the show. But my goodness, this team, they just love to make us sweat. Syracuse had an 11-point lead at the half, and I thought it was a good omen because they didn't play that particularly well, in my opinion. Some sloppy plays on offense, lots of turnovers. I didn't think their shot selection was all that great, but, they were making them. And I thought to myself, well, the difference between this Louisville game and the other 3 during this win streak is that the other 3, it felt like something crazy happened in the first half where Syracuse just basically played flawless. And then in the second half, they couldn't sustain that level of play, and so therefore that's how they blew the lead. Well, on Saturday, I didn't think they played great in the first half and had an 11-point lead. And so I thought, okay, well, if they play better in the second half, if they play up to their capabilities, I'm not saying that they have to, hit 50 points or whatever in a half like they have done recently. But they should be able to coast to a victory. And it looked like they were on their way to doing so. And it was mainly because of Chris Bell. Chris Bell was the MVP of the game. And Coach Autry said post-game that this was Chris Bell's best game in an orange uniform. And I happen to agree with him. Because with Chris Bell, we all know he can shoot the basketball, and he's been hot recently. We all know he can shoot. But what about when it's not going in? What about when it's not going in, right? Can he do other things other than shoot the basketball? That's what's been the frustrating thing about Chris Bell sometimes is if his shot is not going, can he do other things to impact the game and ultimately help Syracuse win? And Chris Bell, yes, his shot was falling. He had 23 points. He hit 3 3-pointers. I believe he was, I'm looking at it right now, 6 of 9 from the field, 8 of 9 from the free throw line. I get it. Great on offense, right? Led the Orange in scoring, by the way. But it was more than that with Chris Bell. He had a LeBron-esque chase down block in the first half where I jumped out of my seat. I couldn't believe it. I was like, whoa, where did he come from? Chris Bell? That was nuts. A chase down block. And then he hit what I thought was, to that point, the shot of the game. And it was early on in the second half. It was relatively early. I'm kind of missing the minute mark, but I do remember that Louisville had cut the lead to 5 in the second half. And then Chris Bell hits a straightaway 3 to put them back up 8. And I thought that was the shot, because on the next possession, then Syracuse gets a stop, and then Judah gets a layup, and then Louisville calls timeout. And from that moment on, Syracuse built up a 16, 17-point lead, if I remember correctly. And that shot by Chris Bell was so enormous because it kind of took the wind out of Louisville's sails. It felt like Louisville was getting back in it, and then Syracuse was like, not so fast. But that's not really what happened in this game. It's not really what happened. Because Chris Bell hits the shot, they go up, they have a big lead, and then Louisville slowly starts to chip away. And again, this has been a growing theme with Syracuse, which is making us sweat. But Bell, it's not just the shooting. He had another critical block. There was around 3:30-ish left in the game, and it kept it a 9-point game at that point. He basically pinned the ball against the basket. It was a really, really impressive block. And, another crucial play to save a bucket. I mean, you think about his 2 blocks, that saved 4 points. It saved 4 points, those 2 blocks. Those were easy layups that Chris Bell took away. So making an impact on defense, along with hitting your shot. And also, Chris Bell had 7 rebounds. 7. You can't ask for much more than that from Chris Bell to get 7 rebounds. So I agree with Coach. Definitely his best game in an orange uniform, and certainly one of the main reasons why Syracuse won this game. Now that we got that out of the way, talked about Chris Bell a little bit. There's still more to talk about with this game. And there's also talk about the ACC and NCAA tournament that I want to get to. So we'll be back right after this. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further? Ever wonder what adventure could be around the next corner? Our friends at Nissan have a lineup of SUVs with the capabilities to take your adventure to the next level. The 2024 Nissan Rogue is perfect for city drives and great escapes. Class exclusive Google built-in is your always updating assistant to call on for almost anything. Gone are the days of connecting your phone. Google Assistant, Google Maps, and Google Play Store are built right into the 12.3-inch HD touchscreen infotainment system. The 2024 Rogue is the perfect midsize crossover for your next adventure. The 2024 Nissan Armada will change what you expect from a full-size SUV. Picture a rugged 4x4 that can seat up to 8 in first-class luxury and style. Tow bigger and explore further in the 2024 Armada. Take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Shop nissanusa.com. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and it's now also available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Welcome back, everyone, into Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer. We've talked about Chris Bell and Syracuse's 82-76 win over Louisville on Saturday. There's still plenty to talk about regarding this game and plus where Syracuse stands in the ACC and NCAA Tournament right now. Quick shout-outs here. Judah Mintz, he had 21 points. He was his typical self. Right? I don't think he did anything extraordinary, but he was his usual Judah Mintz self, and I thought he was the best player for Syracuse, and that's what you can really ask for, right? Justin Taylor continues to be active for this team. He really is. He's active, and one of the main criticisms I had with him was he looked invisible on the floor, and now he's making an impact. Good or bad, he's making an impact, and he hit 2 crucial free throws at the end of the game that really iced it for Syracuse, put them up 6 with around 30 seconds left. Clutch free throws, when at that point, Justin Taylor was 1 of 5 at the free throw line. So credit to him for making them when they mattered the most, right? That's really what it all is with free throws. Can you make them when they matter the most? And Justin Taylor did that, and I thought he had a pretty solid game, 11 points and 5 rebounds, and he had to play all 40 minutes. He played all 40 minutes in this one. Unbelievable from Justin Taylor to play all 40 minutes. Quadir Copeland fouled out, so he only played 11, and Kyle Cuff, for whatever reason, only played 3. So Justin Taylor was asked to do a lot more than what we should expect from him going forward, and to his credit, I thought that he delivered in this one. Now, of course, the elephant in the room, which is that I don't know what's going on in these second halves. I tried to answer it. I was on the double overtime for WAER on Saturday, and I couldn't really find an answer to why Syracuse keeps struggling in the second half. Some of it might be fatigue. Some of it might be poor shot selection. Other teams adjusting. I mean, this has been 4 games in a row. So at the end of the day, I don't know what to do. We all know that this is like weird, right? That this isn't necessarily sustainable for this team. You can't just keep getting out to big leads and then blowing them. Right? You would like to see Syracuse put together a complete 40 minutes. And during this win streak, they haven't. Now, they've won, but it's just a little bit concerning that, every time they can't really play defense in the second half of games. They can't. Against NC State, they let up 43 points in the second half. That was more than their first half total. Against Notre Dame, they let up 56 in the second half. 56 points in the second half, nearly blow a 29-point lead. Against Virginia Tech, they let up 44 points in the second half. And against Louisville, they let up 48. It's a lot of points. Is it just teams adjusting? I don't necessarily have the answer. I wish I did. And comment below if you think you have the answer to why Syracuse keeps struggling. It's not necessarily the offense. It's the defense, more importantly. I don't have the answer to this. I really don't. But Syracuse won the game. The Orange are on a 4-game win streak. And so now I think that covers what we need to cover with the Syracuse and Louisville game for the most part. I think we've talked about that enough. I guess one thing I left out was free throw shooting wasn't good for Syracuse. Right? That was one of the main reasons also why this game was relatively close. Syracuse couldn't make a free throw. They were 25 of 39 for the game. That's 64%. Obviously not good enough. But it's free throws. We can't break them down or anything. So the main message is hit your free throws, right? We need Syracuse to hit their free throws down the stretch if they want any chance of doing anything going forward. Having said that, let's transition to where Syracuse stands right now in the ACC, and a possible NCAA tournament berth. As far as the ACC, here on this Monday morning, March 4th, as it stands right now, Syracuse is the number 4 seed in the ACC. Now, why is that significant for those that don't know? If you are a top 4 seed, you get a double bye. That's important. A double bye? It's pretty good. Now, what does so as far as to clinch the 4 seed, Syracuse would need to beat Clemson on Tuesday, and then they need Wake Forest to lose one of their final 2 games, which are Georgia Tech and Clemson. That's what they need to clinch the 4 seed. My goodness. You know, I started making videos less than 2 weeks ago, and if you were to tell me that Syracuse would be in this position right now, I'd be stunned. I'd be stunned. And we're going to talk more about it. We're going to talk more about the ACC and the NCAA tournament as a whole. I promise, right after this. Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and more. And hey, let's talk about Syracuse football for a little bit, right? Let's talk about them. If you believe in what Coach Fran Brown is doing with this program right now, well, you can go on FanDuel and put your money where your mouth is and bet the Orange to win the ACC outright. That's right. That's right, rather. Can they win the conference? You can bet on it right now. The odds are at plus 4,200. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. All right, we're back here on Locked On Syracuse, and it's time to continue the conversation about where Syracuse stands in the ACC and the NCAA tournament. So, as I alluded to, Syracuse is right now, or as I mentioned, Syracuse is the 4 seed in the ACC as it stands. The 4 seed. And in order to clinch, the Orange need to beat Clemson on Tuesday, and they need Wake to lose one of their final 2 games of the regular season. That's what they need in order to clinch that 4 seed. Now, here's the interesting scenario with this. What is the best case for Syracuse? What do you want? And I've thought about it for a while, and does Syracuse really want the double bye? I mean, on the surface, you would say, of course, right? But for where Syracuse is right now, in terms of NCAA tournament standing, is, look, the Louisville game, people will say it hurt, but it really didn't hurt Syracuse. I know they dropped 2 spots in the net, which is absolutely mind-boggling to me because the net makes no sense. But really, we all know that game in the grand scheme of things shouldn't matter all that much in Syracuse's tournament chances. It's really going to come down to tomorrow, right? To make the tournament outright. That's what we're talking about here, because there's always the path to winning the ACC. So, do you want the double bye? Because here's the thing. Let's say Wake Forest wins out and Syracuse wins on Tuesday. That would mean Syracuse is the 5 seed in the ACC tournament. The 5. Now, I don't know exactly who they would play, but I would be fairly confident that they can beat any team in the 5 seed game. Right? We still don't know how all the standings are going to shake out, so it's impossible to really tell which team it's going to be. But Syracuse will be favored in that one. And I will say this. I mean, Miami, I think, would be a tough matchup, but aside from Miami, they should be able to beat whoever they play against. Could be Georgia Tech, Boston College. We don't know. Notre Dame, perhaps, again. Does having that extra win benefit them, and then they go and play against Wake Forest with probably the right to go to the NCAA tournament on the line? Because here's the thing. If Syracuse is the double bye, they're not guaranteed to play a good team when their matchup comes, because upsets can happen. Upsets can absolutely happen. This is March, everyone. This is where all the weird stuff happens. All of the weird stuff happens right now at this time. And let's say Syracuse does get the 4 seed in the ACC tournament. They are not guaranteed to play a Wake Forest, a Clemson, and any of those type of teams in their game. They probably would. But they're not guaranteed, because Wake Forest could lose, or Clemson could lose. Whoever is the 5, whoever ends up being the 5, if Syracuse is the 4, could lose their first game, and therefore Syracuse would play, I don't know, Georgia Tech. Does that really help them? I don't know. I guess the possibility of an upset, I don't know if that really helps them there. Because if Wake loses, you don't have the opportunity to beat them. And I guess they would lose standing for the NCAA tournament. They would, but I think it would mean more if Syracuse would actually beat them outright and avenge their 29-point loss earlier this season. I think it would just mean more. Now, the flip side is, well, if you don't get the double bye, and now you got to play that extra game, and that extra game doesn't really do all that much to their resume, right? Does beating a Georgia Tech, Boston College, Notre Dame actually really help them to make the NCAA tournament? And the answer is probably not. It's probably just one of those games where Syracuse just has to win, and the next game is what really matters. So it would be similar to playing Louisville on Saturday, beating Louisville no matter what, just find a way to win, and then having to play Clemson, which is the game that matters, right? So I don't know if beating one of those teams in their first game really it can't really hurt, but I don't know if it really helps their resume. I don't know if it really helps. There's a lot of scenarios to go over here. There's so many, and I feel like we can do this thought exercise forever. But it's just interesting. Do you want the double bye with the chance that, maybe you're not going to play a good team to get to the semifinals because of an upset that could happen? Or do you want to ensure that you're going to play a top 4 team in the ACC, but having a game where you can't gain any ground and you could lose and therefore lose everything that this team is built? It's an interesting thought. As far as matchup-wise for the ACC tournament, their best path is to avoid the 7 line. Avoid the 7 line or the 8-9 game. The reason for that is because you want to avoid Carolina or Duke until you absolutely have to play those teams, which if you're in the 4 or the 5, you won't have to play those teams until the semifinals at minimum. You don't want to play those teams again. I mean, I know that Syracuse beat North Carolina, but I wouldn't take their chances on a 3rd try. And Duke is just Duke. I don't think they have the firepower to beat them. They could, I guess, on a neutral court, but it's not something I would want to take the chances on, right? So that's really the key. And to ultimately make the NCAA tournament, we've talked about this before, but it's all going to hinge on tomorrow's game, and we'll talk more about that on tomorrow's episode. But also it depends on how they do in the ACC. And I think regardless, in order to make the NCAA tournament with an at-large bid, with where they stand right now, instead of maybe winning 2 games like I previously said, because that was the assumption that they wouldn't get the double bye, they just have to win that 4-5 game, assuming they have taken care of Clemson. They have to win the 4-5 game or the 4 whoever game to make it. That would be to make it with an at-large bid. I don't really see a scenario right now with their current standing where this would be like 2021, where they can have like a close loss at this point, right? If you recall in 2021, I call Syracuse lost to Virginia on a buzzer beater in the ACC tournament. And I called that the best loss in Syracuse history because it actually helped them that they lost in that fashion because it showed that Syracuse was a better team and a tournament-worthy team. And at that point, Syracuse's resume was stronger than it is right now, at least metric-wise. It was stronger then. So I don't see that scenario where Syracuse can lose on a buzzer beater against Wake Forest in the 4-5 game potentially, assuming again that they got to beat Clemson, and then make the NCAA tournament because it was a close loss. I think they have to win that game outright in order to make it. So that is it for today's episode. We covered a lot. We talked a lot about the Syracuse-Louisville game and plus some scenarios in the ACC tournament and what they have to do to make the NCAA tournament. Tomorrow is going to be a big one because Syracuse is going on the road to play Clemson. My, oh my, do the Orange need that one. Click the like and subscribe button if you liked it, and we'll be back on Tuesday.